which has been newly learned, settles in the presences of three-brained beings who have only the reason of knowing, and always remains only simply as information without any kind of cognizance by the whole of their being. And therefore new data of every kind, formed and fixed in this way for the three-brained beings who have the reason of knowing, have, in respect of their use, no significance at all for the welfare of their own subsequent existence. Moreover, the duration of the decrystallization of this kind of fixed impressions depend on the quantity and the quality of the impulses engendered in the given being. As regards this latter fact ensuing from the already degenerated functioning of the reason proper to the three-brained beings, and which most of your contemporary favorites today already have, one also very rarely used saying of our respected teacher Mullah Nasruddin is remembered in me by association and is expressed by the following words: "As soon as anything is needed, it seems that it is filthy and eaten by mice." Although every kind of what your favorites call knowledge, which they have, and which has been acquired in the common presences of beings in the said manner, is also subjective, yet it has absolutely nothing in common with what is called objective knowledge. Well then, my boy, in order that the mentioned Zerno-Foucaultian friction should be obtained in beings, and that at the same time the crystallization of the new perceptions should proceed for the reason of understanding, I, already knowing very well what are called the laws of the fixing and unfixing of ideas in localizations, the details of which laws, to mention it by the way, I learned also thanks to the three-brained beings who have taken your fancy, during my sojourn among them as professional hypnotist, had in view during my tales, among many other necessary principles in respect of the current perception of new information through guidance from without, always to keep also to the same inevitable rule, so that the gradualness of the enlarging of, as is said, the quintessence of the information should proceed in you with the entire absence of the being impulses of indignation, offense, vexation, and so forth. In respect of the sequence of my information to you, and of the results of your essence understanding, I must still tell you that if, when I first noticed your interest in the three-brained beings who arise on the planet Earth, I would have given from the very beginning concerning every event only my personal conviction, and the opinions which had become fixed in me about them during the period of my observations, and only afterwards would have begun to give you the abundant and many-sided totality of information already related by me, then all these facts I related would have been taken in by you without your own being logical confrontation, and the data which had been crystallized for this information would have settled in your corresponding localizations only simply as information, without any genuine being understanding of them. That is why in all my tales about the three-brained beings who breed on the planet Earth, I was guided by this, that on the one hand, there should be crystallized in the corresponding localizations of your common presence many diversely formed data for your future being association concerning all the totalities or branches of objective knowledge, and on the other hand, that the process of Zerno-Foucaultian friction should proceed intensively in your common presence, and that that result should be obtained which I have just witnessed in the way you answered my question, "Why are you weeping?" Now, my boy, as I've already become more or less convinced that the time I have spent has not been in vain, and that my tales about the three-brained beings of your planet who have taken your fancy have brought you the benefit I expected, then I think we might stop talking about them, so as not to evoke the process of active mentation in you any longer. Besides, time is short, for we shall soon be on our dear planet. Nevertheless, I must now briefly explain and strictly command you that as long as our journey lasts, That is to say, as long as we speak about the three-brained beings of the planet Earth, you should try, with the reason you have in your presence, so to arrange that certain of those functions which flow in you, and which in general give three-brained beings the possibility of active mentation, should remain inactive, or as is said, should rest. That is to say, those functions should rest in you, which during this time participated more intensively than usual in your active mentation. The functions of which do not depend on the essence of beings, but depend exclusively on what is called the harmony of the common cosmic tempo. By the way, you should always remember that the reason of any being and the intensity of the action of this reason depend on the correct functioning of all the separate parts of his whole presence. For instance, all the functionings of the planetary body and the body itself are the chief parts of a being. But the separate functionings, as well as the whole of this body itself, without other of the spiritualized parts of the being, are only a dependent cosmic formation, conscious of nothing. And therefore, on the basis of what you once called the common universal pillar of justice, each spiritualized part of a being must always be just towards this dependent and unconscious part, and not require of it more than it is able to give. Just as everything else in the megalocosmos, in order that the planetary body of a being may correctly serve its chief part, that is to say, in order that this auxiliary part of the whole being should properly serve his essence itself, this essence must always be just and make demands on it only according to its inherent possibilities. Besides this question of justice, it is necessary to act toward the unconscious part of a being in such a way as to make it possible for certain functions to remain inactive from time to time, in order that it might be always possible for this unconscious part, gradually and in its time, to blend its newly acquired subjective tempos with the objective tempos of our common megalocosmos. One must notice that in the megalocosmos the blending of tempos proceeds only kasnu-kiskernian, that is, as your favorites would say, with law-conformable gradualness. And so, if you wish that your active mentation during your future responsible existence should proceed correctly and productively, you must now, if such a mentation has already begun in you, and if such an inner process has undesirable consequences for your planetary body, not occupy yourself at all for a while with such mentation. However much you may like it, and however greatly it may interest you, otherwise desonakuazance will result in you. That is to say, only one part of your whole presence will acquire another tempo, and in consequence you will become again, as your favorites would say, lopsided. By the way, most of your favorites, particularly the contemporary ones, when they become responsible, become just such lopsided beings. In short, only by a gradual change of the tempo of one part of the whole is it possible to change the tempo of all this whole without injuring it. I find it necessary to repeat that the active mentation in a being and the useful results of such active mentation are in reality actualized exclusively only with the equal degree functionings of all his three localizations of the results spiritualized in his presence, called thinking center, feeling center, and moving motor center.